Before the advent of Spanish colonization, the barangay was the primary political, economic, and socio-cultural institution in the Philippines. Among other factors, the archipelagic nature of our country allowed these localized, independent, and decentralized communities to exist. A barangay can be composed of 300 to 100 families living in a not well-defined but customarily agreed territory. There were three castes during that era, and those are the nobles, commoners, and slaves. The datu is the highest official of a barangay. The datu must be from the ruling class because wealth, power, and influence were needed to maintain social position. The customs of Tagalog obtain simple truth regarding the government, administration of justice, slaves, inheritance, and dowries. Exposing facts about Filipino culture serves as a leverage for Spaniards to govern the Philippine society. On the other hand, early Filipinos already had their own set of traditions, customs, practices, beliefs, and government before the colonization of the Spaniards. This document proves that early Filipino had a rich culture and some of it left a mark and still being practiced up to this day.
It's the source. Father Juan de Plasencia was a Spanish friar of the Franciscan order. He was among the first group of Franciscan missionaries who arrived in the Philippines on July 2, 1578. He was tasked by the King of Spain to document the customs and traditions of the colonized natives based on, arguably, his observations and judgments. He spent most of his missionary life in the Philippines, where he founded numerous towns in Luzon and authored several religious and linguistic books, most notably the Doctrina Christiana, Christian Doctrine, the first book ever printed in the Philippines.
Context: what is going on when the source is created? Customs of Tagalog by Father Juan de Plasencia is the part of longer monographs written by the Chronicles of Spanish Expedition to the Philippines during early 16th and 17th centuries. It is written because Plasencia was tasked by the King of Spain to document the customs and traditions of the colonized natives. Customs in Tagalog mainly focus on the government, administration of justice, slaves, inheritance, and dowries. Juan de Plasencia mentioned in his account that every barangay, a tribal gathering consisting of 30 to 100 families together with their slaves, have their own datu at the top of the social status, governed the people, and was the captain of their wars, followed by the maharlikas, commoners, and slaves. Plasencia described how the children were divided between married maharlika and the slave. This account of Juan de Plasencia strengthens the claim that even before Spaniards colonized the Philippines, Filipinos already have their own set of traditions, customs, practices, beliefs, and government that they abide by.
The next C is connection, that obtain the question, what is your prior knowledge and newly acquired knowledge? The prior knowledge we have are, datus are from a bloodline of a family, which is inherited or passed to the next generation. But, in some cases, an ordinary man or woman can be a datu if he or she made an act of bravery. The word barangay came from the word balangay, which is a type of a boat that people use for trading and to colonize weak places. Natives worship the sun, the moon, and even the stars. There was a group of tribes organized in strict social classes: the datu, or ruling class, the maharlika, or noblemen, the timawa, or freemen, and alipin, or slaves. Slaves are working for their debts. The manner of burying also differs, based on the status of the deceased. And lastly, they hunt, fish, or gather food without any rules to be followed. Our newly acquired knowledge. The master of an aliping namamahay might also sometimes take one child of the latter as an aliping sagigilid in the case of the latter's death. Filipinos are very liable to find auguries in things they witnessed and also practiced divination. They also have distinctions among the priests of the devils, such as katulunan, mankukulam, magtatanggal, and manggagayuma. Filipinos also believe in ghosts, which they call vibit or tikbalang. There is a subclasses of slaves called aliping sagigilid and aliping mamamahay. There is a structured government rules that the natives abide when they are going fishing. They have a specific boundary and must have permission from the dato. The aliping namamahay, who own their own houses and serve their masters by paying tribute or working on their fields, were the commoners and serfs, while the aliping sagigilid, who live in their master's house, were the servants and slaves.
Communication. Is the source reliable? The source written by Father Juan de Plasencia was reliable. It shows the pre-colonial background of the Filipinos back then. When he started the social classes, the governing system at that time was led by a datu who governed a barangay. The word barangay itself that until now we use as a name for the smallest administrative division in the Philippines. He also stated that before the Spaniards came to our country, early native Filipinos had already possessed a rich culture. Also, he spent most of his missionary life in the Philippines, the author of the first book ever printed in the Philippines, Doctrina Christina, and other religious and linguistic books.
Conclusion. How does the source contribute to your understanding of the past? This account of Juan de Plasencia strengthens the claim that even before the Spaniards colonized the Philippines, Filipinos already have their own set of traditions, customs, practices, beliefs, and government that they abide to. He provided information that are helpful for today's generation in understanding our history and in discovering practices that are no longer practiced today. Even now, it is noticeable that some of the practices during the 16th century are still practiced by some of ethnic groups here in the Philippines. The Bagobo system, for example, which requires the bride-to-be's father to make a return present equivalent to one-half of whatever is agreed upon as dowry. And there are still people, especially the elders, that believes in the existence of tikbalang and tiyanak. Even the concept of barangay is still evident in today's generation. It is undeniable that our customs and practices change along with time, however. There are still fragments of our past that remain and will continue to remind us of our origin. It is such an honor knowing about our history and being able to discover how rich the Philippines was in terms of our customs, beliefs, and practices.
The first social classes among Tagalog is Maginoo. They are also called Dato or Datus in Visayan terminology. He governed a tribe which is called Tagalogs, or barangay under him are the three castes, the nobles, the commoners, and the slaves. The characteristic of Datus is considered as the highest class among the village. He is also wealthy and also considered as a warrior.
The second social classes among Tagalog is Maharlika. The equivalent terminology in Visayan is Timawa. The duties of Maharlika is they were obligated to accompany the dato in times of war in their own expense and answer the summon of dato. The characteristics of Maharlika is being freeborn and a warrior.
Social classes among the Tagalog. The aliping namamahay.
Equivalent terminology in Visayan: tuhay, mamahay, tumaranpok.
Duties. Serve their master, whether he be a datu or not. They cultivate half of their lands for their masters, as was agreed upon the beginning.
Characteristics: have the right to get married, live in their own houses, and have properties.
Aliping sagigilid. Aliping sagigilid, also called as halon in Visayan terminology. They serve their master in his house and on his cultivated land. This is the lowest class in the village, can be sold and born a slave.